Senator Siewert.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Acting President. I seek leave to take note of the Prime Minister's statement on closing the gap.
Is leave granted? Leave is granted.
Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy Chair. In responding to the Prime Minister's Closing the Gap report today, I would also like to draw attention to the shadow report of the Close the Gap Steering Committee, and I seek leave to table their report, tabled Shadow Report on the Australian Government's progress towards closing the gap in life expectancy between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians, Close the Gap Steering Committee, February 2001. So I seek leave to table that, and I understand both the government and the opposition have agreed to me tabling that report.
Is leave granted? Leave is granted.
I thank the Chamber or the Senate. First off, I would like to note the distinction between the Close the Gap community campaign, which is in its 5th anniversary next month, and the Closing the Gap, the government programs, which have also been extended to cover the Northern Territory emergency response. And I think this is very important because we actually have two campaigns. We have the Close the Gap community work and the work that the government is doing. The original Close the Gap statement of intent, which was signed by the government, the opposition and the Greens in March 2008, signalled a commitment to a list of very important measures. Two of these commitments have not yet been met and seem to have been missing from the programs and funding of the government's Closing the Gap measures. In fact, this year's shadow report draws particular attention to them, as did the report last year, and I also referred to that report last year. These two issues are to develop into developing a comprehensive long-term plan of action that is targeted to need, evidence-based and capable of addressing the existing inequities in health services in order to achieve equity of health status and life expectancy between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and non-Indigenous Australians by 2030. The second one is to ensure the full participation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and their representative bodies in all aspects of addressing their health needs. It is the issue of participation that I would particularly like to draw to the Senate's attention today. It is about much more than consultation, and especially the narrow way that consultation is often interpreted by the government and public servants. It is about real partnerships in all aspects of health, life and community. The Prime Minister's statement today spoke of increased investment, changing behaviours and working together with respect. While we welcome, of course, the continued investment in Indigenous health at a time when government is cutting funding in other areas, I'm disappointed to see that it seems to date there's been little to indicate the change in behaviour by the government. I believe that this is required if we are really going to begin working together with respect and to make real progress on closing the gap. The Prime Minister today talked about and spent a lot of time today talking about the need for and focusing on the fact that with opportunity comes responsibility, which is continuing the dialogue that the previous government and this government has talked about mutual responsibility. But I'm disappointed to hear that the focus really was only on the need for individuals, families and communities to change their behaviour, and not on how the government also needs to be changing, or not only the federal government, I've got to say, but also state and territory governments need to be changing their behaviours to give and take on a little bit more of responsibility on their part and to show a little bit more respect to the needs for real partnerships and a change in the way they're addressing some of the issues. In other words, responsibility goes both ways. As today's shadow report says, in making these commitments, this is the statement of intent, the Australian government demonstrated that it recognised a sound policy foundation was needed if the COAG targets were to be met. It acknowledged that a haphazard, unplanned effort will not deliver health equality within a generation, and that Australian governments must work with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and their representatives if the targets are to be achieved. In other words, a health partnership between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, their representatives and Australian governments was needed. They go on to say that that was 3 years ago. and that since then there has been significant investment in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health, as well as other positive developments, such as the appointment of a Minister of Indigenous Health. However, there has been no sign of a plan or partnership. In fact, policy is still not being developed with adequate participation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and their representatives. They went on to say that broken promises litter politics, but there is more at stake here than just the Australian government's credibility. Without a plan or a partnership, that there is a risk that the significant investment made in health since 2008 will be wasted. It should not be forgotten that planning and partnership are efficiency measures too, helping to secure the best bang for the buck in a time of limited resources. But more importantly, they said, it is the ongoing, unnecessary and preventable fatal impact on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander lives and the suffering that will result if the national effort to secure health equality does not proceed on a firm policy footing. I draw the Senate's attention specifically to the ongoing problems with the funding and administration of Aboriginal health services, funding that is often fragmentary, short-term and over-specific and accompanied by undue, onerous and inappropriate reporting requirements. These problems have been documented and pointed out to the government many occasions, but specifically in 2009 in the Overburden report by the Cooperative Research Centre for Aboriginal Health. We have yet to see the planned and comprehensive approach to delivering primary healthcare services to Aboriginal Australians that is needed. We're yet to see the investment in building the capacity of Aboriginal-controlled health organisations to deliver and support Aboriginal health workers and managers of the future. We have yet to see from the government the type of mutual respect that is needed if we are to form real partnerships, and if we are to turn rhetoric into reality. The bulk of the funding of the Close the Gap measures continues to be delivered through mainstream health organisations, which do not reach out to many of the people in greatest need, and not enough is being done to invest in and build the capacity of Aboriginal community-controlled health services, despite their strong record of reaching those most in need and delivering good outcomes to Aboriginal Australians. Having said that, although it's not addressed in the Prime Minister's speech, I note from media today that apparently representatives of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peak health organisations have been meeting with the Prime Minister and Ministers Roxon and Snowden, and I understand that there has been a commitment to start to work together in partnership to follow up on the commitment that I've been talking about. In other words, that development of a more comprehensive plan. And I've read that I've read that in the media today. We believe this is an important development, and I urge the government to take seriously its new commitment to work in partnership with these and other key organisations. We believe they need to ensure that the substance of that partnership and the results that it produces are fed through effectively to COAG, and that they encourage their COAG members to also commit to the development of such partnerships, and that all levels of governments are committed to full participation and partnership in the ongoing campaign to closing the gap. The reason I believe this is important is because we do need to change from the government's rhetoric to reality. In other words, its actions need to meet what it's saying it's doing. The government says it's committed to closing the gap. The government says it's committed to delivering the commitments that it's signed up to. Yet it continues to undermine the rights of Aboriginal people. It talks about addressing the issues of disadvantage, but it fails to make the link between Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islanders' rights and disadvantage. And this was highlighted just 10 days ago with the UN Committee on Human Rights report doing its Universal Periodic Review, where there was 145 recommendations made, I will admit, not just on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander issues, but many of them addressed issues. Many of them addressed the ongoing issues of disadvantage and the undermining of people's rights, and asked for the full, I emphasise the word full, restoration of the application of the Racial Discrimination Act to the Northern Territory, commented on issues around native title, commented around issues of income quarantining, commented on the implementation of the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. All these issues are they need to be fundamentally addressed if we are truly going to close the gap for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders by the time frame that the government and the opposition and ourselves have committed to.